John, what stands out to you from all of these details? Obviously, he did have a manifesto on him, but they're being quiet on motive, quiet on how he got to Altoona, quiet on how long he was there, although it was days. But there is a lot of information in here. What stands out to you?
Well, so many things,
Yep.
but so much that we just discussed. So let's talk about the things we didn't touch on, which is, George Bivens, the Lieutenant Colonel of the State Police, who we know well on this show because he's involved in all the major incidents there, talks about he traveled around the state for several days, presumably since his escape from New York City after the shooting last Wednesday, and has been traveling between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and places in between, which is not a short distance. So we have to ask ourselves a couple things. Is he beginning to effectuate a second stage of his plan where he's going to go on the run? Is he planning to figure out how can I now get involved in international travel with his foreign currency and his passport? Or as an individual who's carrying a manifesto that says, in the plural, that these parasites, must be killed and things like that.
And these parasites must be killed. Parasites, plural.
He is armed with a weapon and ammunition and cash. So was he going to do another job, hit another person, perhaps another executive from the healthcare field or another field in his kind of anti-capitalist, anti-profiteer genre? And they dodged a bullet by finding him because of this publicity and that alert employee and customer.
Perhaps quite literally so. Kirk, when we hear that, 3D printed gun, ammunition, loaded Glock magazine, as well as 6 9mm full jacketed rounds found. When you think about the ammunition that he used prior, when you hear what John's saying and what we see in this, does it seem to you that perhaps he was preparing for another one?
I think so. I think John hit the nail on the head here. In particular, hearing about the cash, that's a fairly large amount of cash somebody can survive on for some time, and the Faraday bag. So it seems that he was not prepared to return to a particular location, but to move around. When I first heard about the weapon, I thought perhaps he retained the gun in order to elude capture and perhaps battle it out with the police.
Right, if police arrest him, he has it to shoot back.
Yes, but clearly he wasn't prepared to do so when these police officers approached him because he knew who they were, he could see them coming, and also he didn't have the gun on his person. So it does sound like he was preparing to take some form of possibly future action.
Mary Ellen, let me ask you, from what you are hearing now, what they found, and they talk about how he responded when that police officer, 6 months on the job, walked into that McDonald's early this morning and apprehended him. He pulled down his mask, he cooperated, then he gets visibly nervous when asked if he was in New York. What stands out to you?
Well, the one thing that I keep thinking about as I listen to John, and I agree with John about perhaps he was not finished. This is a very smart young man. He has 2 degrees, valedictorian of his high school class. I believe he knew he could never really return home. This was it for him. You can't return home and just assume a normal lifestyle after what he did in New York. So I do think that there was more on his agenda, that he wasn't done. It could have also included suicide at the end. But they caught him in midstream, and I think I feel like that's really part of what he intended to do is to continue on with the shootings. And I think that's, part of that mentality, part of that injustice collecting when he uses terms like parasites. He wasn't just referring to the one person. And he spent at least a year in planning and thinking about this.
CNN has just obtained a photograph of the gun found on the suspect in the shooting of the CEO of United Healthcare. Take a look at this new photo obtained by CNN's John Miller. It's the weapon recovered by police earlier today when they detained 26-year-old Luigi Mangione. New York police officials say this is a ghost gun, meaning a handmade weapon that could have been 3D printed. It's not the only potential evidence police say they found in Mangione today after a McDonald's employee spotted him eating inside the restaurant and called 911. Police say they also found a multi-page document on the suspect, and a source says that document criticized the health insurance industry and included the lines, quote, "These parasites had it coming," and, quote, "I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done," unquote. A private memorial is being held today for United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, according to a source. Thompson was on his way to attend his company's annual investor conference when he was shot and murdered last week in New York. Let's go straight to CNN's Danny Freeman, who is live for us outside the McDonald's in Altoona, PA, where Mangione was taken into police custody just hours ago. Danny, do investigators know how he ended up in Altoona?
And Jake, that's still one of the biggest outstanding questions that we're hoping to learn. What brought 26-year-old Luigi Mangione specifically to Altoona and specifically to this McDonald's behind me? I'm going to show you just really.
Looks like we're having problems with our satellite.
Midtown Manhattan,
Oh,
where
there it
that
is.
crime. Oh,
Let's go back
can
to
you hear me,
Danny.
Jake?
Danny,
Okay,
yeah,
so yeah, I'll
you
tell you
broke
right
up
now.
for a second, Danny. Go ahead, start again. Oh, got another hit.
no, I was just going to say. Oh, maybe? Can you
No,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, so Jake, I just want to describe to you where we are. So this is the McDonald's right here where Luigi Mangione was apprehended by police. Altoona police, they said that at 9:14 this morning, they received a call, like you noted, from an employee of this McDonald's, a female employee of this McDonald's, saying that someone saw who they believed to be someone who looked like the suspect in that United Healthcare CEO murder. Altoona police arrived here, right to this restaurant. They came inside, they spoke with this man, and sure enough, they ended up apprehending him. Now, they arrested him for charges unrelated to specifically the murder. They arrested him on gun charges, but on his person, notably, as you noted, they found that ghost gun. They found that suppressor. They found fake IDs. They also found a manifesto. Much of that, I believe, our colleague Bryn Gingras will get into in just a moment. But again, I just wanted to describe to you, Greyhound station that's right in this immediate area, Jake. The Greyhound station is maybe about an hour's walk from this point, maybe about 10, 15 minutes of drive. There's a local bus station right here. The question still is, why this specific spot, and how did he get here at 9:14 this morning, where he was ultimately apprehended by local law enforcement officials, Jake?
All right, Danny Freeman in Altoona, thanks so much. Let's go to Bryn Gingras in New York. And Bryn, you have some new reporting about a fake ID that was also allegedly found on Mr. Mangione.
Yeah, and Jake, we know that NYPD investigators are there in Altoona. They are working on this investigation, obviously trying to talk to Mangione at this point. And that fake ID is key. Let's talk about why, because it is one of many that was found on Mangione, according to sources. And let's take a look at it for your viewers. But police believe this New Jersey fake ID may be the same one that was used to check into that Upper West Side hostel that police knew was used prior to the murder happening last Wednesday. So that would give it a direct connection to here to New York, to the possibly the crime. So that is a big piece of evidence that they found. Of course, as you just heard Danny mention, they also found that ghost gun, that picture that John Miller had, that they believe possibly could have been made with a 3D printer. They're going to run ballistics on that, but they know that it could fire 9mm bullets. And they also found a silencer, and that also was something very unique to this investigation. So investigators certainly are going to be looking at that handmade silencer or suppressor as well to kind of see if there's a connection there. But it doesn't end there. Of course, there is so much investigation that is still being done at this point. We know that Mangione was carrying some sort of document, according to our sources, that really railed against the healthcare industry. Didn't name any names, didn't say Brian Thompson at this point, of course, a victim in this case. But certainly it is something that they are now looking into exactly what sort of strife he might have had with the healthcare industry. He said, as you mentioned, Jake, some of the phrases in this sort of document, quote, "The parasites had it coming." That was one line, and another was, quote, "I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done." Jake, we know at this point investigators are still trying to make all the connections they possibly can, including trying to answer that question you asked Danny about how did he get to Altoona from New York City. But they're also, at this point, they're going to get him fingerprinted. You know that they are going to take his DNA once after this arrest, and hopefully they can make that connection as well to some of the evidence that was left behind very close to the crime scene, Jake.
At this McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, authorities believe they captured the suspect in last week's New York City sidewalk shooting.
At this time, he is believed to be our person of interest in the brazen targeted murder of Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, last Wednesday in Midtown Manhattan.
Authorities say a McDonald's employee called the police while the suspect was eating in their restaurant around 9 a.m. this morning. Police say they found in his possession a gun and suppressor consistent with the weapon used, a fake New Jersey ID consistent with the ID used by the suspect, clothing including a mask consistent with those worn by the suspect, and
Officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset.
police identify the suspect as Luigi Nicholas Mangione, age 26, born and raised in Maryland, graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2020, last known address in Honolulu, and no prior arrests in New York.
All of these endeavors took a huge amount of courage.
Graduation video suggests Mangione was valedictorian at his all-boys high school in 2016. Authorities say the note found in his possession railed against the healthcare industry.
We don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
It said, quote, "These parasites had it coming, and I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done," according to a police official who has seen the document. The note says he acted alone and that he was self-funded. And it asked why we have the most expensive health care in the world and yet are ranked 42nd in life expectancy. Authorities also investigating other writings of his online. As to the gun,
The gun appears to be a ghost gun, may have been made on a 3D printer, the capability of firing a 9mm round.
police did not have the suspect's name until today and say tips from the public were crucial to finding evidence and making this arrest, along with old-fashioned detective work.
It really comes down to the video canvas that we did. We used every source of video that we could collect, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours from hundreds of sources.
Also helping authorities,
There are a number of mistakes that this shooter made, to include leaving forensic evidence behind. The DNA, all the videos, taking off his mask.
one hypothesis,
with his manifesto and everything he's done so far, the letters on the words on the bullets, right? The monopoly money. This guy, I think, he wanted to be captured eventually.
Police have arrested a suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. 6 days now after that murder, outside of Hilton in Manhattan, police picked up 26-year-old Luigi Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania. This is after an employee at a McDonald's recognized him from photos and called the cops. Joining us now, Congressman John Joyce, a Republican who represents the Altoona area. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Sorry it's under these conditions. Can you tell us if the NYPD has arrived on the scene yet, as far as you know?
Jake, just in the last 30 minutes, the FBI and the NYPD have arrived at the Altoona Police Department's headquarters. And I've been in contact with officials from the Altoona City. I have not talked to the Chief of Police, Joe Merrill, who is keenly involved in this investigation.
So what's curious, and you might not have an answer for it, is why he was in Altoona. It's a lovely place to go. You and I have common friends in Altoona, the Port family. But he's from apparently Maryland. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. Is there a connection he has that you know to Altoona at all?
No known connection, but there's great availability. We have rail, we have bus service, and we have a great interstate highway system that comes through Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so it's like a thoroughfare. It's pretty incredible. I don't know if you know who this McDonald's employee is. One of your constituents, it seems, identified him. And the only reason that this case has been cracked, assuming it has, is that this McDonald's employee in Altoona recognized the assailant from the photos that have been on TV.
Jake, this was a courageous employee, a restaurant employee at McDonald's on Plank Road in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And not only did she see something, not only did she say something, she did something. She alerted the Altoona Police Department, who responded quickly and detained this individual, this person that was suspect and highly suspect. But she was very courageous, asking him to remain there while the police arrived. And to be able to do that, I hope this will put an end to the ongoing investigation. I think that having someone in hand right now, having the FBI and the New York Police Department in Altoona, Pennsylvania, continuing that investigation, will allow many people to rest at ease.
So what did she say to the suspect as far as, she approached him and said something?
I don't know what the content of that conversation was, but I know it was an employee at the McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, a courageous employee.
Yeah, no, it's a gutsy thing. You see somebody, I'm sure most people would be like, oh, I don't even know. What if I'm wrong? What if that isn't him? But, he really looks a lot like him. And she just called 911, I assume, and the police came?
And we have 66 police officers in the Altoona Police Force. My medical practice, I practiced medicine for 25 years before coming to Congress. My medical practice is just 2 blocks away from that McDonald's restaurant. It's in a place where I took my children when they were young, and I took my grandchildren as well recently.
So you're a physician, and since the shooting, we've heard a lot of, two things. One, understandable frustration with the health insurance industry, which my dad's a doctor also, and I know that that's something that a lot of doctors experience. And then two, a real nihilistic and horrible, distasteful rejoicing in the murder of this health insurance executive. What's been your reaction to this?
First and foremost, I deplore any type of violence to this degree. This is not the way to solve the problem. But when I ran for Congress 6 years ago, the frustration of the constituents in South Central Pennsylvania was one of the reasons that I ran for Congress, to be able to address that, to be able to address access to care, that patients had the opportunity to receive the care, the medicines, and the therapies that they need to heal.
All right, Congressman John Joyce, Republican of Pennsylvania. Thanks so much. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate it. It's the arrest of a suspect in the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. The NYPD says that 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was arrested on a gun charge this morning at McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Among the items found on Mangione was a 2-page document that officials say indicated he, quote, has some ill will towards corporate America, unquote. A police official who has seen the document said it rails against the health insurance industry and suggests that violence is the answer, and specifically contained the following lines, quote, these parasites had it coming, and, quote, I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done, unquote. While we do not know whether the document specifically mentions United Healthcare, we do know the killing last Wednesday has unleashed a flurry of anecdotes of individuals denied insurance claims, some cases matters of life and death, perhaps also bottom line decisions that felt to the patients, the customers, compassionless.
Lift this knee. Can you move that ankle? Now I'll help you to the bathroom. I had to give her haircuts and showers. And until you've had to do that with your own mother, you can't know what it's like. But to United Healthcare, she was a number. She was a dollar amount. $90 billion in profits. And anyone on here who is saying, oh, all of you commenters have no compassion for him, you're right. We don't. He had no compassion for us.
Let's bring in CNN's Claire Duffy, and CNN's John Miller is still with us. And Claire, this has really exposed the extent to which so many Americans are frustrated with health insurance companies. And obviously, no, none of us support murder. None of us think that violence is the answer. But these are real struggles.
Yeah, Jake, it is interesting because normally when we see this kind of public display of violence, the response on social media is one of support and sympathy, but that has not been the case here. One of the examples that really stood out to me was this Facebook post from United Health expressing sadness over Thompson's death. It got tens of thousands of emoji reactions, and most of them are laughing emojis. I think what we're seeing is this sort of bubbling up of the pent-up anger and frustration that so many Americans feel over the healthcare and health insurance industries. And we've seen a lot of these stories, people sharing of, as you said, being denied health care claims. And that is one of the things that experts say is often the root of people's frustration with their health insurance. There was a study last year that found that a majority of Americans, 58%, experience some problem with their health insurance over the course of a year, often including claim denials and pre-authorization issues. And of that 58%, 15% of those people experienced actual negative implications for their health. These denials can cause anxiety. They can delay treatment. So I think what we're seeing is this general sense from many Americans who feel like these companies, although I'm sure the companies would sort of quibble with this depiction, but that these companies are prioritizing profit over the people that they're serving, Jake.
And John, this obviously theoretically goes to motive. Based on what you're learning about the document police say was found with Mangione, this 2-page manifesto, how will investigators determine whether his feelings about health insurers were actually the factor?
Well, the letter certainly, as much as we know about it, seems to spell that out, talking about profiteering and the the words that were on the bullets, which is deny, delay, depose, talking about the litigious nature of and the slow rolling of claims payments and so on. So it appears there. But I would also say, having done a pretty good sweep of his social media activity, internet activity, and the places where we can see him interacting with others, this doesn't seem to be an out front theme. You asked a couple of times before today, did police have his name? How did police not have his name? And police did not have his name because he just wouldn't have been on that radar beyond this. This was the result of literally thousands of hours of reviewing video by hundreds of cops who pulled those tapes by going block by block, store by store, building by building, camera by camera, until they assembled, all these hours and found that one moment when the mask was down. Before that, the moment in Starbucks. After that, the moment in the taxi, till they had enough images, till somebody, a woman in a McDonald's who worked there, said, I think that looks like the guy. That's the only reason they had his name, not because he was in the DNA database. He wasn't. Not because he had a criminal record and his prints would have popped when they took him from the phone, because he isn't. This guy was a ghost.